First contact shock. The vast emptiness of space surrounding Earth's orbit was suddenly filled with the imposing presence of warships. They materialized seemingly out of nowhere, their massive hulls reflecting the distant sun like artificial meteors. There were hundreds of them, arranged in a formation that clearly communicated military precision and overwhelming force. Commander Eliza Reed stood on the observation deck of Orbital Defense Station Aegis, her face illuminated by the emergency lights that had automatically activated when the unknown fleet appeared. At 42, Reed had spent most of her career preparing for this exact scenario, though many of her colleagues had considered it a waste of resources. Now, as she watched the alien armada position itself around Earth, she felt a strange mixture of vindication and dread. "Report," she ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Lieutenant Chen, her second in command, looked up from his console. "Over 300 vessels detected, Commander. Configuration unknown, but energy readings are off the charts. They've positioned themselves in a standard siege formation. Any communications?" "Nothing yet, but they're scanning us extensively. Our countermeasures are in place. They're only seeing what we want them to see." Reed nodded. Humanity had long suspected they weren't alone in the universe and had planned accordingly. For decades, Earth had maintained a carefully crafted facade of technological mediocrity. Old-fashioned satellites, primitive space stations, fossil fuel dependence. Meanwhile, beneath the surface of the moon and hidden throughout the solar system, humanity's true capabilities had been developing at an astonishing pace. "Commander," Chen called out, "they're broadcasting on all frequencies. Put it through." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a humanoid figure with iridescent scales covering its face. Its eyes, 4 of them, arranged in a diamond pattern, blinked independently as it assessed the humans on the other end of the transmission. "People of Earth," the alien began, its voice translated through the station's advanced systems. "I am Supreme Executor Vorax of the Archethian Dominion. Your primitive world has been selected for integration into our glorious empire. Resistance is pointless and will only result in your annihilation. Your species will serve a purpose within our hierarchy, commensurate with your limited abilities. You have 1 planetary rotation to surrender your governments and resources." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the command center in silence. After a moment, several officers began discussing emergency protocols, but Reed raised a hand to silence them. "Lieutenant Chen, establish a direct channel to the alien flagship." "Ma'am." Chen looked confused. "Shouldn't we alert the Council first?" "The Council knew this day would come," Reed replied calmly. "They've already authorized the first contact protocol." She straightened her uniform and stepped onto the communications platform. "Open the channel." The alien commander appeared on screen again, clearly surprised at the quick response. Before he could speak, Reed offered a polite smile. "Supreme Executor Vorax, I'm Commander Eliza Reed of Earth's Solarian Defense Force. I must say, your entrance was quite dramatic. However, I believe there's been a misunderstanding about our civilization's status." Vorax's upper eyes narrowed. "There is no misunderstanding. Our intelligence is impeccable. Your species has barely managed space travel using primitive combustion technology. You have no interplanetary colonies, no significant orbital infrastructure." "Ah," Reed interrupted, "you're referring to our heritage technology. We maintain those systems partly out of historical interest and partly as a defensive measure. It's rather like keeping a modest home to discourage thieves. Wouldn't you agree?" For the first time, uncertainty flickered across the alien's features. "What deception is this?" "Our scans show only what we've allowed them to show," Reed finished for him. "Supreme Executor, I'd like to demonstrate something, with your permission. It might help clarify our situation." Without waiting for a response, Reed nodded to Chen, who pressed a sequence of commands into his console. Throughout the solar system, sophisticated cloaking fields began to deactivate in sequence. On the Archethian flagship, alarms suddenly blared as their sensors detected thousands of new objects materializing throughout Earth's solar system. Massive defense platforms emerged from hiding positions near Earth's Lagrange points. A ring of sleek battlecruisers decloaked around Mars. Asteroid-sized manufacturing facilities appeared in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. "What is this?" Vorex demanded, his composure cracking. "This is humanity's actual technological level," Reed explained calmly. "What you're seeing is approximately 30% of our defensive capabilities. The rest remain concealed, for obvious reasons." Another officer approached Reed, whispering something in her ear. She nodded and turned back to the screen. "I've just been informed that our AI defense systems have already mapped your fleet's vulnerabilities and developed countermeasures against your weapons. Additionally, several of our infiltration protocols have successfully accessed your ship's databases. We're downloading your star charts and technical specifications as we speak." The alien commander's skin paled to a sickly hue. "Impossible. No species at your development stage cold." "Perhaps that's because we develop differently than the other species you've encountered," Reed suggested. "Humanity has always been exceptionally motivated by perceived threats. Our entertainment media has speculated about hostile alien encounters for centuries. We've been preparing for this meeting longer than you can imagine." Vorex seemed to regain some of his composure. "Even if what you claim is true, the Dominion's full military might could still reduce your world to ash." "Perhaps," Reed acknowledged. "But at what cost? Your advanced scouts have likely already reported our unusual defensive posture to your superiors. I imagine they're quite curious about how a supposedly primitive species managed to hide their true capabilities from your impeccable intelligence." She leaned forward slightly. "Supreme Executor, I propose we move past these initial misunderstandings and begin proper diplomatic relations. Earth has no interest in conflict with the Archethian Dominion. In fact, we see this as an opportunity for mutually beneficial cultural and technological exchange." Vorex's four eyes blinked in different patterns, suggesting internal calculations. Finally, he spoke. "Your claims are significant. They require verification. I will consult with the Dominion Council." "Of course," Reed nodded. "In the meantime, perhaps you'd like to send a delegation to our lunar diplomatic facility. We could begin preliminary discussions while you await instructions." The alien commander hesitated, then gave a stiff nod. "A delegation will be dispatched. But be warned, Commander Reed, if this is some elaborate deception, the consequences will be severe." As the transmission ended, Lieutenant Chen approached Reed. "Do you think they'll actually consider diplomatic relations?" Reed watched the alien fleet on the view screen, noting how they had already begun to adjust their formation from offensive to defensive positioning. "They don't have much choice," she replied. "We've just completely upended their understanding of galactic power dynamics. The Archethians appear to be conquerors, but intelligent ones. They won't risk a costly conflict when they can potentially gain through alliance." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "So what happens next?" Reed smiled as she watched a delegation of Earth's finest diplomats preparing to depart for the lunar facility. "Now," she said, "we welcome them to the neighborhood and rewrite the rules of engagement." Meanwhile, aboard the Archethian flagship, Supreme Executor Vorex dismissed his advisors with a gesture, needing solitude to process this unprecedented situation. In his 17 cycles as a conquest commander, he had subdued 43 planetary systems, none of which had presented any significant challenge. Earth was different. Somehow, these humans had anticipated contact with superior alien forces and prepared accordingly. They had hidden their true capabilities behind a convincing facade of technological inferiority. Most disturbing of all, they seemed utterly unintimidated by the Dominion fleet. Vorex activated his private communication channel to the Dominion homeworld. This situation would require new instructions. For the first time in his distinguished career, Supreme Executor Vorex found himself facing a species that might be more dangerous than his own. The tables turn. The lunar diplomatic center gleamed under Earth's reflected light, its crystal and titanium structure representing humanity's architectural achievement. Inside one of its many conference chambers, representatives from Earth sat across from the Arcathian delegation. The atmosphere was tense but controlled. Ambassador Helena Ortiz, Earth's foremost xenodiplomat, studied the aliens with professional interest. The Arcathians moved with a fluid grace that suggested their reptilian appearance wasn't merely superficial. Their iridescent scales shifted color subtly with their moods, currently displaying a pattern that her training identified as cautious curiosity. "We appreciate your willingness to engage in diplomatic discussions," Ortiz began, her translator converting her words into the clicking, hissing language of the visitors. Earth has long prepared for first contact with other intelligent species. The lead Arcathian diplomat, Subcommander Xilvex, tilted his head. "This preparation is unprecedented. Most civilizations we encounter are either entirely unaware of extraterrestrial life or have only recently confirmed its existence. Humanity has always been imaginative," Ortiz explained. "For centuries, our literature, films, and cultural works have explored the possibility of alien contact, both peaceful and hostile. When our scientists confirmed the mathematical certainty of intelligent life elsewhere in the universe, we decided as a species to prepare for all scenarios. Yet you maintained the appearance of primitive technology," Xilvex observed. "Why the deception?" Ambassador Ortiz smiled. "We call it the zoo hypothesis approach. When humans observe wildlife, we often conceal ourselves to see natural behaviors. Similarly, we wanted to observe the galaxy's true nature before revealing ourselves. Your arrival and immediate attempt at intimidation validated our caution." The Arcathian scales flickered with what might have been embarrassment. "The Dominion's methods have proven effective across thousands of worlds." "Until now," Ortiz noted. In orbit above them, a different conversation was taking place. Commander Reed had been invited aboard the Arcathian flagship to meet directly with Supreme Executor Vorex. The massive vessel dwarfed anything humans had built, though not for lack of capability. "Your ship is impressive," Reed commented as she was escorted through corridors lined with armed guards. "We could construct vessels of this size, but we found distributed defense systems more practical." Vorex, walking beside her, gave a dismissive gesture. "Size projects power. The psychological impact of a Dominion dreadnought has ended many conflicts before they began." "Different philosophies," Reed acknowledged. "We focused on hiding our capabilities rather than flaunting them." They reached the command center, a cavernous space filled with Arcathian officers working at stations configured for their unique physiology. A large view screen displayed Earth, peaceful and blue, surrounded by the now visible human defense grid. "Commander Reed," Vorex began formally, "I have received instructions from the Dominion Council. They find the situation unprecedented. I imagine they do. You must understand. In our expansion across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy, we have never encountered a species that concealed its advancement so effectively. The Council is concerned about what else you might be hiding." Reed maintained a neutral expression, a reasonable concern. "Just as we're concerned about the 43 civilizations you've integrated into your empire." Vorex's scales darkened. "You accessed our secure archives. As I mentioned earlier, our infiltration protocols engaged automatically when you entered our system. We've had access to your database since shortly after your arrival." The Supreme Executor's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of stress. "The Council wishes to understand how your technological development proceeded so unusually." Reed considered how to explain humanity's unique path. "Unlike many species, humans are not naturally unified. We evolved as tribal competitors. Our history is filled with conflicts that drove innovation. When we realized we weren't alone in the universe, those competitive instincts redirected toward external preparation. You developed in fear of invasion," Vorex concluded. "Not fear," Reed corrected. "Prudence. Different nations pursued different technologies. Some focused on defense, others on communication, others on cloaking and deception. Without a central authority dictating our approach, we explored countless possibilities simultaneously. What you see now is the result of 1,000 parallel efforts, combined when we finally achieved global cooperation. On a secondary view screen, data flowed as Archethian scientists analyzed human technology. Their confusion was evident even to Reed. "Your power generation methods are unlike anything in our records," one scientist reported. "And your computational approaches are entirely orthogonal to galactic standards. Convergent evolution often leads different species to similar solutions," Reed explained. "But humans deliberately pursued alternative approaches to avoid the limitations we might share with other civilizations." Vorax processed this information silently. Finally, he asked the question that clearly troubled him most. "What are your intentions toward the Dominion?" Reed's answer was immediate and firm. "Peace, cooperation, and mutual respect. Earth has no imperial ambitions. We developed our capabilities for defense, not conquest." The Council finds this difficult to believe. Power inevitably seeks expansion. "Perhaps that's true for Archethians," Reed suggested. "Humans are different. We've seen where unchecked expansion leads in our own history. We have no desire to repeat those mistakes on a galactic scale." Before Vorax could respond, alerts sounded throughout the command center. Officers rushed to their stations, scales flashing with alarm patterns. "What is it?" Vorax demanded. "Unknown vessels approaching from Sector 7, an officer reported. Configuration matches Cerulean raiders." Reed recognized the name from the Archethian database, a notorious species that preyed on shipping lanes throughout the Dominion. 12 vessels, attack formation," the tactical officer continued. "They appear to be targeting both our fleet and the human defenses." Vorax turned to Reed. "A common enemy arrives at an opportune moment. Perhaps a demonstration of your capabilities is in order." Reed smiled slightly. "I believe we can accommodate that request." She activated her communication device. "Aegis Control, this is Commander Reed. We have hostile contacts approaching. Deploy Sentinel Protocol, non-lethal configuration. Across Earth's defense grid, previously dormant systems activated. Swarms of autonomous drones, each no larger than a human hand, deployed from hidden bays in the lunar surface. They moved with impossible speed, surrounding the approaching raiders before they could react." "What are those?" Vorax asked, watching the tactical display with fascination. "Kinetic disruptors," Reed explained. "They generate localized gravity fields that disable propulsion and weapons systems without destroying the vessels." On the screen, the raider ships suddenly went dark, drifting helplessly as the drone swarm enveloped them. "No casualties," Reed noted. "The crews are unharmed, but completely neutralized. Your security forces can take them into custody at your convenience." The command center fell silent as the Archethians processed what they had just witnessed. A threat that would have required a significant portion of their fleet to address had been neutralized in moments, without a single shot fired. "The Council will find this demonstration enlightening," Vorax finally said. His scales had shifted to a deep blue that Reed's briefing had identified as respectful acknowledgement. "Commander Reed," he continued, his tone markedly different from their first interaction, "I believe our relationship with Earth requires significant reconsideration. The Dominion has never encountered a species quite like humanity." Reed nodded. "Supreme Executor, I believe this is the beginning of a much more productive conversation." In the Lunar Diplomatic Center, Ambassador Ortiz was leading the Archethian delegation through a virtual tour of Earth's cultural heritage when she received notification of the incident. She smoothly incorporated it into the discussion. "What you're seeing is humanity's preferred approach to conflict resolution," she explained to the now attentive aliens. "We developed non-destructive technologies specifically to create options beyond simple destruction." Sub-Commander Xilvex's scales had lightened to a pale green. "Your species is not what we expected." "We get that a lot," Ortiz replied with a smile. Now shall we discuss the terms of the mutually beneficial alliance? Earth has much to offer the Dominion, and I suspect there is much we could learn from you as well. As the diplomatic teams began serious negotiations, Commander Reeb stood beside Supreme Executor Vorex on the observation deck of his flagship, watching Earth rotate serenely below. "Your world appears so peaceful from here," Vorex commented. "It is difficult to reconcile with the formidable defenses surrounding it." "That's humanity in a nutshell," Reed replied. "We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Today, it seems our hope was justified." Vorex's scales shifted through several colors before settling on a pattern Reed hadn't seen before. The Dominion has existed for 15,000 years. In all that time, we have expanded, conquered, and assimilated. Perhaps it is time to consider a different approach. Reed smiled. "Welcome to the neighborhood, Supreme Executor. I believe this is the beginning of a fascinating relationship." As the Earth continued its eternal rotation below them, two representatives of vastly different civilizations stood side by side, contemplating a future neither had anticipated. The Archithian Dominion had arrived expecting easy conquest and instead found a worthy partner. Humanity had prepared for conflict but discovered an opportunity for peace. In the vastness of the galaxy, a new chapter was beginning, one where understanding might prevail over intimidation and cooperation over conquest.